Under the burning San Diego sun, a young K-9 officer froze in the middle of the crowded pier. He was supposed to be heading back to the precinct, supposed to finish his shift quietly. Yet fate dropped 3 wounded German shepherds at his feet, broken, bleeding, and begging for help no one else dared to offer. Tourists hurried past, shielding their eyes from the glare, pretending not to notice the violence lingering in the air. But he knelt anyway, hands trembling as he lifted each injured dog from the blistering pavement, unaware that this moment of mercy would paint a target on his back. In an instant, Daniel Reed went from an unnoticed patrol officer to the man who rescued the wrong dogs from the wrong family. And he had no idea the stranger in the red dress watching from the cafe door would be the one to turn the entire city's balance of power upside down. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. San Diego at noon was a city carved from heat and glare, its coastline shimmering beneath a sun so bright it turned the streets into sheets of white fire. The ocean wind offered little mercy, just a warm, salty sweep that carried the cries of gulls and the distant hum of tourist boats. Cars crawled along the waterfront boulevard, their roofs reflecting the relentless sun, and beyond them the harbor stood still in a haze of blue. Officer Daniel Reed, 27, tall and lean, with the quietly disciplined posture of a man raised on rules and responsibility, guided his K-9 cruiser through the river of midday traffic. His skin was sun-touched from long patrols, his jaw angular, his brown hair neatly cut, and his eyes a calm gray that rarely betrayed emotion. Daniel had always been the kind of officer who treated strangers gently, but danger seriously, shaped partly by a childhood spent in a rough neighborhood with a single mother who worked double shifts and taught him that strength meant control, not rage. In the back compartment of the cruiser lay his 3 partners, Titan, a 5-year-old sable-coated German shepherd with steady amber eyes and a posture that radiated unshakable confidence; Nova, a 3-year-old black and tanned female with sharp ears, quick reactions, and a bright intelligence that made her the most observant of the trio; and Ranger, the youngest at 2, larger framed with dark fur, reckless energy, and a tail that never stayed still, loyal to the core but still learning when not to jump headfirst into trouble. They were trained differently, thought differently, moved differently, but together they made a balanced team. Titan the anchor, Nova the mind, Ranger the heart. The heat pressed into the windshield as Daniel sipped warm water from his bottle, radio murmuring quietly by his shoulder, until a violent metallic shriek tore through the air. A silver hyper-tuned sports car, engine screaming, shot through the boulevard at a speed that sliced the lazy midday calm in half. It swerved hard, nearly clipping the side of a tour bus filled with elderly visitors whose horrified faces flashed by behind the windows. Daniel's hands were already moving. Lights on, siren igniting, cruiser surging forward. Ranger barked first, a sharp alarm. Nova's ears pinned back. Titan rose, steady but alert. The chase lasted only moments. The boulevard narrowed. Traffic forced the sports car to slow, and Daniel boxed it in against the curb with precise, practiced control. Heat radiated off the hood as he stepped out. The driver's door swung open, and a young man stumbled out, a handsome 22-year-old with slicked-back dark hair and a body draped in designer silk the color of polished steel. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, his movements sloppy but arrogant. This was Cody Romano, the only son of Victor Romano, a man whispered about in every precinct. Tall, immaculately dressed, mid-50s, with a reputation soaked in corruption and a smile that never reached his cold, predatory eyes. Victor controlled half the shipping lanes of San Diego and a good portion of the men who moved in its shadows. Cody, unlike his father, had the soft features of someone who'd never been punished for anything. His lips curled into a drunken smirk when he saw Daniel. "Do you know who my father is?" he slurred. The alcohol radiated from him like steam. Daniel forced his voice to remain even. "Step away from the vehicle, sir. Hands where I can see them." Cody laughed, pulled out a phone made of real gold, and pressed a contact without looking. "Dad," he whined, "some K9 cop is hassling me again. Can you— Yeah, just handle it." Then he hung up and grinned, swaying. Titan gave a low, calculating rumble from inside the cruiser. Daniel kept his stance firm. "Turn around. Hands behind your back. You are under arrest for reckless endangerment and DUI." Cody blinked, stunned that anyone had dared to touch him, but the cuffs clicked shut before he could protest more. Then the sunlight dimmed, not because of clouds, but because a black SUV glided up behind the cruiser, blocking the lane with predatory silence. Its doors opened in perfect synchrony, and 4 men in tailored black suits emerged. Their builds varied, one broad and thick-necked like a former boxer, another wiry with narrow eyes, another tall with a carved, stoic face, and the fourth compact but lethal in posture. Their movements were coordinated, unemotional, professional. They were not the kind of hired muscle found in alleys. They were men trained to break problems quickly. Nova bristled. Ranger pressed his paws to the cage door, barking furiously. Titan stood as still as stone, gaze locked on the threat. Daniel lifted his hand. "Stay back! This is an active arrest!" They didn't listen. The largest man lunged first, ripping Daniel's weapon clean from his holster with a twist strong enough to snap leather. Another grabbed his radio and smashed it against the curb. The third forced Daniel's arms behind him, shoving him to his knees. Heat pulsed through the concrete, burning his skin. Cody smirked, leaning against his car as if watching a show. "Careful with him," he drawled. "Wouldn't want the officer crying." Then one of the suited men glanced toward the K9 cruiser, lips curling. "Let's open the back," he said. "Let the mutts join." The man pulled the release handle. The door hissed open. Titan burst into daylight. Muscle, discipline, and fury. But the men were already lifting their boots. Daniel's voice cracked in horror as he saw steel-toed shoes swing back. The first kick was coming down, and the chapter froze at that brutal, sun-scorched moment. The first kick struck Titan's ribs with a sickening, hollow thud that echoed across the burning boulevard, followed by another blow that sent dust scattering off the concrete. Nova lunged forward, her sleek tan and black frame low and sharp like a blade, but a steel-toed boot slammed into her shoulder, flipping her sideways. Ranger, all youthful power and unfiltered loyalty, hurled himself at the nearest suited man, only to be met mid-air by the swing of a short baton that cracked against his flank with enough force to throw him off balance. Their cries, raw, helpless, agonizing, cut through the heat-warped air, turning the midday glow into something savage and merciless. Daniel struggled violently, but the 2 men holding him were built like industrial pillars. The first was a square-jawed brute with a shaved head and arms thick as beams. The second, a tall, long-limbed man with a predatory calm in his movements, the kind earned by years of doing violence without hesitation. The shaved-head man pressed Daniel's shoulder blade deeper into the hot pavement, burning his skin, forcing him to watch. The tall one pinned Daniel's wrists with a grip like iron rods, his face unreadable, almost bored, as if hurting people had long ago become routine. Cody Romano, still leaning against the silver sports car, laughed under the blazing sun. His carefully oiled hair glinted. His silk shirt clung to his chest with the sheen of expensive fabric. His eyes, blue but empty, reflecting nothing but self-indulgent cruelty. He clapped slowly, mockingly. "Look at them," he said. "3 overrated mutts. Daddy pays more for my sneakers." The words hit Daniel harder than any blow could have. Titan tried to rise, collapsing halfway. Nova whimpered through short breaths. Ranger curled protectively, dragging himself between them despite the pain. Daniel felt something inside him twist and split. Anger, fear, and helplessness all clashing together. Then a different sound cut through the chaos. Calm, cool, unmistakably in control. "Stop. Now." The voice carried across the sunlit street like a ripple of cold water thrown into fire. All 4 suited men froze, not in fear, but in the instinctive awareness of someone who held authority without raising her tone. From the shade of a high-end street cafe stepped Olivia Parker, a young woman in her late 20s, tall and slender, with striking cheekbones, sun-kissed skin, and long auburn hair tied into a sleek, high ponytail that caught the light. Her red dress, smooth silk, knee-length, fitted, contrasted starkly against the pale concrete and the sterile black suits around Daniel. A matching red blazer draped over her shoulders. Oversized sunglasses hid her eyes, but not her confidence. In one hand, she held a latte in an elegant grip that spoke of someone used to expensive things. Olivia was known across San Diego's upper circles as the CEO of Parker Meridian Group, a conglomerate that owned tech, startups, luxury housing developments, and a private security firm run by veterans. What most people didn't know was that her father, Samuel Parker, once a decorated Marine instructor, had raised her with a strict blend of discipline and precision. Unlike the porcelain-thin heiresses of tabloids, Olivia carried strength in the way she planted her feet, a subtle, balanced readiness. 2 men followed her from the cafe. Her personal security detail, both dressed in casual coastal attire to blend in. The first, Derek Hale, mid-30s, dark-skinned, muscular, with a clean fade haircut and a stoic expression, had once served as a Navy corpsman. The second, Luis Mendoza, early 30s, lean with sharp features and tattooed forearms, moved with the smooth confidence of someone trained in reconnaissance. They didn't touch their weapons. They didn't have to. Olivia spoke again, her voice firm as sun-heated steel. "You have 5 seconds to step back." The broad-shouldered brute replied with a sneer. "Lady, walk away. This doesn't concern you." Olivia didn't blink. She lifted one hand, barely a gesture, and her 2 guards moved with trained precision. Derek closed the distance in 3 quiet steps, grabbing the man who had kicked Titan by the collar and wrist, twisting sharply. The man's baton clattered to the pavement. Luis intercepted the wiry attacker mid-swing, redirecting the blow before driving his elbow into the man's ribs. Olivia herself advanced straight toward the man holding Daniel down. The tall, long-limbed one tried to rotate his grip, but Olivia's father had taught her something few in her world knew: how to break balance before breaking bone. She stepped inside his reach, pivoted on the ball of her foot, and drove a sharp kick directly into the nerve cluster on his wrist. The man's hand spasmed, releasing Daniel. Olivia set her heel on Daniel's fallen gun with calm precision, preventing anyone from reaching it. Cody stared, stunned, his smirk dying on his lips. His phone slipped from his grasp. "Who the hell are you?" he stammered. Olivia didn't bother answering. Instead, she pointed toward the K9 cruiser. "Officer Reed, get in the car. We're taking your dogs to emergency care. Now!" Her tone brooked no argument. The moment Daniel was freed, he stumbled toward Titan, Nova, and Ranger. Each dog's breath was ragged, their bodies trembling. Nova tried to lift her head when she saw him, desperate to show she was still fighting. He gathered Titan first, feeling the labored rise of the dog's chest. Derek carried Ranger with surprising gentleness. Luis lifted Nova like he had carried wounded teammates before. As the sun beat down on them, they loaded the dogs into the back of Daniel's cruiser. Olivia slid into her luxury car and gestured sharply. "Follow me." The drive to the veterinary emergency clinic blurred past in sun-bleached streaks until they burst into the cold, sterile lobby. The on-call veterinarian, Dr. Amelia Torres, a woman in her early 40s with olive skin, dark curls pinned back, and calm, compassionate eyes hardened by years of trauma cases, rushed forward. Her hands moved with expert efficiency as she examined each dog. After a tense few minutes, she looked up, her expression grim. "Titan has fractured ribs. Nova's lung is compromised. Ranger is bleeding internally. All three need surgery immediately. Their chances 50-50. Daniel's breath faltered. His body felt weightless and numb. He reached for the clipboard, but his hand shook uncontrollably. Without a word, Olivia took it, signed the consent forms, and handed over her black titanium credit card. Dr. Torres nodded once and signaled her team. The dogs were wheeled away. 3 motionless forms on 3 metal gurneys. The operating room doors swung shut. A red light blinked on. Surgery in progress. Daniel and Olivia stood on opposite sides of the hallway, both frozen in the harsh fluorescent glow, not knowing if any of the 3 warriors they had fought to save would survive. San Diego's afternoon sun pressed down like a furnace, boiling the air above the asphalt and bleaching the world into sharp, unforgiving brightness. Inside the quiet recovery ward of the emergency veterinary hospital, however, the heat felt distant, muted behind sterile walls, harsh lights, and the hum of machines. Titan, Nova, and Ranger lay in 3 separate stainless steel recovery enclosures, each enclosed by glass panels. Tubes ran across their bodies like pale veins, oxygen lines, IV drips, heart monitors. Titan, the oldest and steadiest, barely moved except for the shallow rise of his rib cage. Nova's chest expanded with difficulty, her breaths thin and uneven. Ranger twitched weakly in his sleep, his paws flexing as though dreaming of running somewhere safe. Daniel Reed sat on a plastic chair, shoulders slumped forward, elbows on his knees, his normally sharp posture hollowed into exhaustion. Deep shadows pooled beneath his gray eyes, making him look older than 27. His uniform shirt was wrinkled, smeared with dust and dried blood, and his fingers never stopped trembling. The machines beeped softly, steady, then uneven, then steady again, each tone tugging another piece of him apart. He had chased criminals, kicked down doors, stood in front of knives, but nothing had prepared him for the helplessness of watching 3 partners fight for their lives without him. Olivia Parker had left only when the surgeons insisted they needed space. She had touched Daniel's arm gently before stepping out, a quiet gesture, not pity, but solidarity. In the silence that followed, Daniel watched Titan's half-open eyes, Nova's labored breaths, Rangers' shivers. He whispered to them one by one, voice cracking. "Hang on. All of you. Please." By evening, the hospital's glass doors slid open, letting in a blast of hot air and the harsh scents of gasoline and street dust. Daniel stepped outside, heading back to the San Diego Police Department, only to walk straight into the storm waiting for him. Inside the precinct, the atmosphere had changed. Officers who normally greeted him with nods now whispered among themselves. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared with a strange mixture of discomfort and pity. On the second floor, Captain Ruiz, a stocky man in his 50s with a salt and pepper mustache, worn edges, and the tired eyes of someone who had stayed in the job out of duty, not ambition, met Daniel with a stiff jaw. Without inviting him in, the captain handed him a written notice. "Read, administrative leave, effective immediately." His voice was clipped, shame flickering behind the sternness. Daniel took the paper, his throat tightening. "Sir, Not here," Ruiz interrupted. "Not with who's watching." He glanced subtly toward the hallway, where two men in tailored suits stood pretending to read a bulletin board. They didn't belong in a precinct. Their posture was too straight, their expressions too polished. The Romano family's shadow had arrived. An hour later, Daniel found himself banished to the precinct's basement, an archive room carved from cold cement, lined with towers of dusty boxes filled with forgotten reports. A single flickering bulb buzzed overhead. A broken fan sat useless in the corner. It smelled of old paper and damp metal. He spent the next 2 days in this tomb of dead cases, sorting files that no one cared about. No badge, no street duty, no K9 team. Just isolation. Romanos's power was faster than he imagined. On the third day, during the blinding heat of noon, Daniel headed to the parking lot. The brightness stabbed his eyes, making his vision blur for a moment. When it cleared, he saw a tall, silver-haired man leaning casually against a pristine white Lexus. The man wore a cream-colored suit tailored to perfection, a pale blue tie, and glossy loafers that matched his polished demeanor. His skin was fair, his jaw narrow and clean-shaven, and he had the kind of smile that sharpened rather than softened his features. This was Mark Collins, high-profile attorney for the Romano Empire, smooth-talking, image-obsessed, and feared in courtrooms for his surgical precision. Collins extended a manicured hand. "Officer Reed, I'm so sorry we meet like this." His voice was warm, almost soothing, but unnatural, like silk stretched over razors. Daniel didn't shake his hand. Collins withdrew it with a polite nod, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve before continuing. "The Romano family feels terrible about the misunderstanding." He emphasized the last word with theatrical sympathy. "They are willing to make a generous donation to the K9 unit. 5 figures. Daniel's jaw tightened. Collins leaned closer, lowering his voice. "And all they ask is that you correct a few lines in your report. Nothing dramatic. Simply clarify that the dogs were agitated first. That young Cody reacted poorly because he felt threatened." Daniel's lips parted, disbelieving. Collins smiled wider. "San Diego's hills are steep, officer. The roads can get slippery, brakes fail, accidents happen." Daniel stepped back instinctively. His stomach twisted. His hands went cold. Collins straightened his cuffs and tapped the roof of his Lexus twice before sliding in with effortless grace. "Think about the offer," he said, "for your sake, and your dog's." The Lexus glided away like a blade through water. Daniel drove home in silence. His apartment, small ground floor, with thin beige curtains and a single deadbolt, felt more fragile than ever. Sunlight filtered through the window slats, turning the dust in the air into drifting particles of gold. But instead of warmth, Daniel felt watched. Then a soft knock tapped against his door. He approached cautiously. When he opened it, a flash of red filled the doorway. Olivia Parker stood there, dressed in a scarlet blazer over a fitted red top, matching red trousers, and practical red sneakers instead of heels. Her auburn ponytail was tied higher today. Her sunglasses hung from her collar. In one hand, she held a toolkit. Behind her stood a stout man in his 40s carrying a metal case. Hank Doyle, a professional locksmith with a shaved head, weathered brown skin, forearm tattoos of gear and keys, and the calm expression of someone who had spent 20 years repairing the chaos other people created. Olivia lifted the toolkit. "Your door is a joke," she said simply. "We're fixing it." Daniel blinked. "You hired a locksmith?" "Two," Olivia corrected, stepping inside without waiting for permission. "Your windows are worse." Hank nodded gruffly. "Yep, wouldn't keep out a determined raccoon." While the sun dropped lower, painting the street in orange fire, Olivia and Hank replaced every lock, reinforced the frame with steel plates, mounted a secondary latch, and installed a discreet hallway camera about the size of a coin. As Hank drilled, Olivia spoke lightly, without drama. She told Daniel about a break-in at her penthouse years ago, how thieves had slipped past a faulty lock while she slept, and how she swore never to be prey again. Daniel shared stories of K9 work, of Titan's stubbornness, Nova's quiet loyalty, Ranger's boundless enthusiasm. They laughed once, softly, unexpectedly. The fear between them softened into something human. By the time the final screw went in, the sky had turned blood orange. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. "Thank you," he said quietly. Olivia tilted her head. "You needed help, so I helped." Then, a deep metallic thud echoed from outside. The window rattled violently. Daniel and Olivia turned simultaneously. A white, unmarked van had rolled to a silent stop at the curb, its windshield dark, its paint scuffed, its engine still idling. Two large silhouettes stepped out, broad-shouldered, carrying long, heavy objects wrapped in cloth. Olivia slipped on her red-tinted sunglasses, her eyes narrowing with ice-cold calculation. "Daniel," she murmured, voice steady, "don't move." Her gaze locked on the approaching shadows, and the chapter froze on that razor's edge moment. Heat, fear, and danger converging beneath the sinking sun. The white van idled only long enough for its occupants to scan the building. Two hulking silhouettes with the stiff-backed posture of men accustomed to property destruction rather than repair, before rolling away under the pressure of staring neighbors and the gleam of Olivia's newly installed hallway camera. But for Olivia Parker, even a minute-long threat was unacceptable. Danger didn't have to kick down a door to be real. Danger only needed to test the lock. And someone had tested Daniel's. As dawn burned into a hot, glassy San Diego noon, Olivia moved swiftly, her red dress replaced by a streamlined red jumpsuit that allowed freer movement, her hair wound into a tight knot, her eyes hidden behind slender red sunglasses. Her expression remained controlled, but Daniel sensed the undercurrent beneath her calm. Not fear, but strategy. She had already sent Hank Doyle's camera footage to her network, Former military contractors, cybersecurity specialists, and private investigators she trusted. Their responses came quickly. The men in the van weren't plumbers. They weren't amateurs. They were hired intimidators often used by criminal networks to test vulnerabilities and deliver warnings. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken. Only a message. We can get this close. Olivia didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't have to. By lunchtime, she asked Daniel to meet her on the balcony of a small seaside cafe overlooking the bright sprawl of the San Diego harbor. Boats bobbed in the shimmering blue water. The sun ricocheted off steel railings. Gulls wheeled overhead in the raw heat, harsh beauty masking harsher undercurrents. Olivia arrived with her usual effortless presence, a long red summer dress flowing around her ankles, a thin gold bracelet reflecting sparks of sunlight. She carried a small matte black case and set it on the table between their iced coffees. "Open it," she said softly. Daniel lifted the lid. Inside lay a micro-recording device no larger than a stick of gum, a nearly invisible earpiece designed for one-way communication, and a business card bearing the embossed name Mark Collins, the Romano family's lawyer. Daniel swallowed hard. "You want me to call him?" "He expects you to," Olivia corrected. "You refused him once. He'll want to finish the job." Daniel rubbed a hand across his jaw. "If this goes wrong, it won't." Olivia leaned in slightly, her voice level but with a strength that steadied him more than she realized. "You're still police. You're still trained. But this time you're not walking into the lion's den alone." Her plan unfolded with precise clarity. Daniel would pretend to accept Mark Collins's offer and request a private meeting to finalize the revised statement. Collins would bring Cody Romano. He would want to gloat, to reassert power. The location Collins insisted on, all but guaranteed, would be a place they controlled. Olivia's team would be there too, blending in, watching, recording, every second uploaded to off-site servers. "I'll handle eyes," Olivia said. "You handle the voice." Daniel stared at the case again. "What if they're smarter than we think?" "They aren't," she said. "Not when they believe they've already won." 2 days later, beneath a sky so bright it washed the city in scorching white, Daniel parked beside an abandoned warehouse near the harbor. The building's metal siding was faded and sun-blistered. Its windows were boarded or broken. Its roof sagged slightly toward the ocean. From a distance, it looked lifeless, but Daniel knew better. Criminals didn't choose random places. They chose places they had used before. He adjusted the micro-recorder adhered between his shoulder blades, feeling its thin edge through his shirt. The earpiece sat deep in his ear canal, invisible. Olivia's voice filtered into the world of his thoughts. "Breathe. Keep your shoulders tight, your jaw loose. Fear makes them confident. Confidence makes them sloppy. Let them believe you're beat." Daniel forced a shaky breath. He took several slow, uneven steps, not entirely feigned, and pushed open the warehouse door. Inside, he found Mark Collins waiting with his perpetual, polished smile. Collins wore a pale gray suit today, perfectly pressed despite the heat, and a vest that looked custom-fitted to glide when he moved. His eyes sharpened with satisfaction upon seeing Daniel. Beside him stood Cody Romano, looking far less drunk than the first time Daniel met him. Cody's hair had been slicked back into neat waves, but his eyes retained the same immature arrogance. His jaw was clenched. Whatever bruises Titan had left from the initial arrest were now gone, replaced with unearned bravado. "Officer Reed," Collins greeted. "Glad to see you regained your senses." But Daniel barely had time to react before his stomach hollowed. 6 new figures stepped from the shadows. They were all men, large, broad, disciplined. They wore black tactical gear, tight shirts, lightweight ballistic vests, corded muscles visible beneath fabric. They moved in perfect sync, their bootsteps controlled. Each had an earpiece. Each carried a weapon holstered at the hip. Their faces were carved from stone. Square jaws, flat brows, cold eyes. No bravado, no swagger. Just the stillness of men who had done violence professionally. These were not hired thugs. These were mercenaries. One of them, a bearded man with deep lines carved into his cheeks, had a scar running from his temple to his jaw, a long, pale reminder of survival. Another, tall with pale blonde hair cropped close, had the distant stare of someone whose conscience had been long quieted. A third, with a crooked nose and arms like iron beams, cracked his knuckles without breaking eye contact with Daniel. Olivia's voice came thinly into Daniel's ear. "Daniel, their formation is wrong. Too clean. These aren't bodyguards. They're a hired kill team." Her tone flickered with something he'd heard only once before. Fear, not for herself, but for him. Her next words came sharp. "They've set up signal interference. The audio feed is degrading." As if on cue, the line buzzed with static. Collins smiled wider, enjoying every second. "Before we begin," he said, "a small precaution." Behind Daniel, the metal door slammed shut with a final, echoing clang. The mercenaries reached for their weapons. The sun filtered through the warehouse roof in harsh white stripes, illuminating the gun barrels rising toward Daniel. Olivia's voice broke into static. Then, nothing. And the chapter froze with Daniel alone, cut off, 6 weapons trained on him under the blinding midday sun. The moment the warehouse door slammed shut, sealing Daniel inside the blinding white heat and the 6 raised weapons, Cody Romano let triumph spread across his face. His grin was crooked, immature, eager, like a child finally given permission to break something fragile. He stepped forward, brushing a hand over his slicked back hair. "Officer Reed," he said with theatrical disappointment, "you really thought you could trap us? You're the one who doctored the report. You orchestrated the whole attack." His voice echoed under the metal roof, bouncing off rusted beams. Behind him, Mark Collins adjusted his vest and smirked. The 6 mercenaries began to close in, boots thudding dully against concrete. Their leader, the bearded man with the long scar across his jaw, lifted his rifle first. His eyes were dead calm, eyes that had seen too much, done too much, and had long ago buried the remnants of hesitation. Daniel's pulse hammered. He felt the recorder against his spine, useless now. The earpiece was silent. Olivia was gone from his ears. He was alone, or so they believed. Cody raised a finger, as if conducting an orchestra. "You attacked us, Reed. You turned my father's men into victims. And now?" He shrugged. "Now we clean up the mess." The bearded mercenary nodded at the others. Rifles clicked off safety. That was when the first unexpected sound tore through the warehouse. A burst of static crackling from the old construction speakers mounted high along the beams. The men froze. Collins squinted upward. "What the hell?" Then Collins's own voice boomed across the cavernous chamber, magnified and sickeningly clear. "We only need you to rewrite the report. Say the dogs attacked first. In return, the K9 unit receives a large anonymous donation." The room turned to stone. Cody's smug expression collapsed into panic. Collins's face drained of color. The mercenaries exchanged glances. cold calculation replacing their previous certainty. Their employers had lied. Their assignment suddenly looked very different under the weight of federal crimes. Daniel blinked, stunned, until realization bloomed in his chest. Olivia. She hadn't relied on the recorder clipped to his back. She had known they might jam the signal. She had prepared a second strike, one Cody would never expect. Outside, engines roared, tires screeched. Then sunlight flooded the warehouse as the front loading door burst upward. City police vehicles, 3 patrol units, then 2 unmarked sedans, skidded to a halt in the harsh daylight. But behind them came the unmistakable black and blue convoy of the FBI. Agents spilled out, armed, coordinated, voices sharp and clear as they shouted commands that cut through the chaos. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" The mercenaries shifted, hesitating. That moment of stillness was lethal, to their side. With half the city and the federal government watching from the doorway, not even paid killers were willing to ignite a war under the open sky. One by one, rifles clattered to the ground. Knees lowered to concrete, hands laced behind heads. Collins sputtered something about misunderstandings, but 2 agents twisted his arms behind his back and slapped cuffs on him before he could finish. Cody tried to run, sprinting toward a back exit, but another agent intercepted him and drove him into a stack of wooden crates. His handcuffs clicked loud in the too-bright room. Daniel stood still as a detective rushed forward to free him from the mercenaries' perimeter. His hands shook, not with fear now, but with the electric shock of vindication. He turned toward the sunlight streaming through the open door, and there she was. Olivia Parker, in a red blazer and fitted trousers today, sunlight catching on the edges of her sunglasses, her expression unreadable but her posture steady, calm, assured. She stayed back, letting the agents sweep the area. She didn't celebrate. She didn't boast. She simply nodded once at Daniel, as if saying, "Told you you wouldn't fight alone." The crisis unraveled quickly after that. Victor Romano, his influence crumbling, was arrested at his waterfront mansion 3 hours later. The evidence Olivia had forwarded to authorities was too overwhelming to bury. Collins faced charges of bribery, obstruction, and conspiracy. Cody faced charges ranging from assault on an officer to abuse of service animals. And Daniel Reed? His suspension was lifted within a day. Internal Affairs cleared him entirely. His commanding officer shook his hand, apologized, and reinstated him with honors. Olivia refused every request for interviews, photos, or statements. She slipped out of the limelight as easily as she entered it, leaving Daniel to receive the recognition he deserved. Weeks later, under a warm golden afternoon sky, Daniel walked along the seaside park. Titan, now fully recovered, trotted calmly at his heel, broad-chested, amber-eyed, steady as ever. Nova, smaller and quicker, chased a frisbee with a group of laughing children. Ranger, the most mischievous, paced proudly with a tennis ball clenched between his teeth. The dogs bore scars, faded lines across fur and skin, but their energy was vibrant, their spirits unbroken. Daniel threw a ball. 3 shepherds rocketed forward like brown and black comets. A soft laugh sounded behind him. Olivia approached, wearing a red athletic dress and matching sneakers. Her hair was pulled into a high ponytail, her smile easy and warm. "Your 3 warriors," she teased, "look better than their commander." Daniel grinned. "They heal fast." "You do too," she answered gently. They stood side by side, watching the dogs race across the boardwalk. The wind lifted the hem of her dress. The sea shimmered like a sheet of polished glass. Distant gulls cried overhead. The world felt bright again, brighter than it had in weeks. Together, they walked toward the pier. Titan, Nova, and Ranger bounded ahead, their silhouettes stretching across the sunlit planks. Olivia's red dress fluttered in the ocean breeze. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt the city breathe peacefully around him. The final image froze in the afternoon light. 3 dog shadows, 2 human shadows, all cast long and steady across the pier. Silent guardians watching over a city finally safe again. In the end, as Daniel, Olivia, Titan, Nova, and Ranger stood beneath the warm California sun, their shadows stretched long across the pier. 5 lives forever changed by courage, loyalty, and something far greater than chance. And perhaps that is where the true miracle rests. Because sometimes in life, the battles that nearly break us become the very moments God uses to reveal the strength we didn't know we had. Sometimes the people who step into our story at the perfect moment, like a woman in red appearing in the exact second danger struck, are not coincidences, but blessings placed quietly in our path. Titan's heartbeat returning, Nova breathing on her own again, Ranger opening his eyes after surgery. Those were miracles too. Gentle whispers from above reminding us that no darkness is ever strong enough to silence hope. And maybe you have moments like that in your life. Moments when you feel alone, overwhelmed, or forgotten. Moments when the world feels unfair and heavy. If so, let this story remind you, you are not walking your battle alone. There is a light watching over you, guiding you, protecting you, even when you cannot see it yet. If this story moved your heart, share it with someone who may need a reminder that God still works in quiet ways, still sends help at the exact moment we break, still heals wounds we thought would never close. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment about the moment that touched you most. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help spread kindness, courage, and faith. May God bless you, protect your family, and bring peace to every battle you face. If you believe no darkness can extinguish the light, and that miracles still happen, please comment, Amen.